Yeah, I know. I'll probably cut off the first little bit. If not, if you're watching this, give me a second. It takes a second to start this thing up, okay? So just be patient, trust in the process, and we're good to go. Hey everyone, welcome to Intro to Commedia. It is truly an honor to welcome you all into the troupe, and I really can't wait to start working with you all in person. Sorry that this first one is virtual. Your auditions were all wonderful. I know that each and every one of you is going to be a great fit into the troupe. Um, so today, for the first session, we're going to be talking a little bit about Commedia dell'arte. We'll talk about what our club here specifically on campus does. We'll talk about the history of Commedia dell'arte, the art form. We'll talk about the characters and the hierarchical system they make up. And finally, we'll finish off with a little bit of a dive into what an actual show looks like and just some general tips for getting started for future sessions. But before all that, a little bit about myself. My name is Robert Carwaya. You can call me Capo Robbie. I'm a fourth year bio major, going for a minor in creative writing. So I love to talk about writing, science, theater, in case you ever want to talk to me about those sort of things. Those are the highlights. Most importantly, I am your capo comico. What the hell does that mean? Traditionally, capo comico is the sort of director of the Commedia troupe. In our context, you can sort of consider me to be the artistic director of our RSO. I oversee shows, I train new and current members in Commedia, and generally I deal with the artistic side of things while, say, the president, Sophie, deals with the more practical side of things. Speaking of practical, we are going to be meeting every week for your noob training. The rest of these will be in person. And to state the obvious, we will be wearing, the kind of mask that you wear over your mouth and nose when we meet. Unless we get to do some sessions outside, in which case, go nuts, whatever you like. Quick thing about scheduling though, I still haven't been able to find a time that all of you are free. So we're gonna need to negotiate a little. Most of you are free during the weekend, but I saw that some of you said you were busy this first weekend. Besides from that, I'm gonna message some of you later this weekend and see if I can't get you to find some time to spare on weekends for us. We do need to meet up for training. Please meet me halfway. It's just once a week. But exciting stuff, we'll be learning about improv, we'll be learning about physical characterization, and sometime around 7th week, a decent amount into the training, you will all be cast as your character in the troupe. Some of you will get a mask, if not all of you, we'll see, depending on which character you get. But no doubt all of you will get a character. And then after that, we'll spend a session or two learning how to walk and talk and embody your new character. And after we spend a couple of sessions doing that and you're more comfortable, we'll spend 1 or 2 sessions coming up with a show together and rehearsing it to put up and perform 10th week, sometime during reading period probably. You'll get the chance to show UChicago all that you've learned, and you'll finally be a truly experienced member of our troupe. So how about our troupe? UChicago Commedia, the RSO, started back in 2015. I found that out recently. I thought this thing had been going on since like the 80s. No, it's fairly recent. Our founder, Zev, who you might see around the Discord, just kind of went, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Commedia dell'arte troupe on campus? And so there was. We do the same-ish art form that has been done for centuries, with an emphasis on doing improv, sketch comedy shows that involve traditional masks and stock characters with modern jokes and premises. Every now and then we'll do a traditional show, just like they did back in the day, but we mostly do modern premises. Show happens once every quarter, and being noobs, you'll be expected to take part in all 3 shows this year, just to fully immerse yourself in becoming a part of the troupe and learning how to be an expert on your character. After this year, you can choose when you want to be in a show, when you don't, all up to your discretion. If you want, you can even write and propose shows for us, like starting now. We're always looking for that kind of thing. But before you do any of that, you're going to need to know what the fuck Commedia is. You have to learn the history of it. And before we even get to the history, the why and the how of Commedia's birth and rise, I'd like to start by discussing the heart of Commedia. Are there jokes that everyone can enjoy? Now, the more you think about it, the more difficult it might seem to find that one joke, the one joke that you could tell anyone in the world at any time in history that would make them laugh, the ultimate universal joke. Yet we try anyway, and this is because the fundamental basis of Commedia dell'arte is to make people laugh. I know, what a novel concept. No one's ever done it before. But truly, regardless of culture, language, time period, the goal is for anyone at all to watch the performance, connect to it in some way, and find the humor. This is an art form that not only looks at some of the earliest forms of professional comedic performance in the Western world, but also an art form that seeks to understand and use the very essence of comedy itself. So, fun little thought experiment for you. What makes a joke funny? I'll actually give you like a few seconds here. Think about it. What basic requirement do you think is needed to define a joke as funny? Got one in your head? Now, there's not really any wrong answers, and I can't really tell you if yours is fitting or not. But I can tell you that there are some common patterns that most scholars have found all throughout history that tend to be universal in humor in most cultures. For one, stock characters are usually there. By stock character, I mean a stand-in for an archetype that is common in stories. The lazy servant, the strict nagging master, the poetic swooning lover. We see these all over comedies throughout history, and for good reason, because we see it all over our everyday lives. Can't you think of a time when you were asked to do something by someone strict and nagging, but it was just so boring that you couldn't be bothered? Don't you know a friend that's a hopeless romantic swooning for one person after the other? Are you that friend? You know, the essence of humor is relatability. Laughter is social. It signifies a literal connection being made by two humans because they can both relate to the current thing happening. But there's another side to this relatability coin. Can you think of a sitcom where everything always goes right for the main character? Answer is almost definitely no. Homer Simpson, Michael Scott, Leslie Knope, SpongeBob, Ross, Mac, Charlie, they all have one thing in common. They experience a lot of pain and they experience a lot of strife. There's a common aphorism that comedy is just tragedy happening to somebody else. And while that may or may not be true, it's at least present in most comedies and is certainly present in Commedia. No one is happy. Everything goes wrong for them. And we can relate to that. We've all made stupid, dumb mistakes, and sometimes it's cathartic to watch someone else do something silly that we did that one time. However, maybe we haven't been in their shoes. Instead, maybe we just enjoy watching someone get hurt. This is where the last two common patterns come into play: body humor and physical comedy. Now, don't get them confused. They're very different. You can sort of think about body humor as stuff like being hungry or farting or having an itch. They're all Commedia characters are rife with this body humor. And they always have some physical ailment or hunger or just physical urge that they need to be taken care of at that moment. Another thing you'll always see Commedia characters doing is physical comedy. This is your slapstick, your Three Stooges, your people getting literally physically hurt. Of course, you guys are going to learn a little bit of fight choreography later on. Hopefully, we're trying to book that right now. So none of you will actually get hurt. Now that we have a better understanding about the common patterns of humor we see in Commedia, let's talk a little bit about the history. So Commedia dell'arte, in essence, was the first form of professional theater in the Western world. Originating from Italy, it expanded all over Europe in the 16th to 18th century in the form of these traveling troops of actors. Now, these troops of actors were there in Italy, and they were like, I bet we could make a big buck by just going all the way around Europe. Let's go to Germany, let's go to London, let's go to France. But of course, they ran into a problem. How are we going to tell a joke in France that's going to land the same way it does in Italy? Not only just the language barrier, but the cultural barrier. So they employed some of the very same common universal patterns of humor that we just discussed. They had stock characters for people to relate to. They had some pain to connect or laugh at, some physical comedy, some body humor. There was a heavy emphasis on physical characterization as well. And all of this was done so that anyone, no matter what country they went to, could gather the basic story and jokes just from the visuals alone. They could look at it and know what's going on. Now, the improv was because they didn't know where they'd be performing one day to the next. So they could adapt the basic story and jokes to whatever new town they were in, make the show even more relatable to the audience. We're in Germany, we're going to talk about this German food that everyone likes here. Isn't that silly? They literally talk about current events happening wherever they ended up. And as a result, due to all this really genius craftsmanship, it became a super popular form of theater. I mean, everyone in society was a fan of this. And it had to do in some part because each character in Commedia represents some aspect of society that everyone could relate to, be it on the streets or in the palace. Now, troops were democratic. They were all writing and editing the scripts together. Women were allowed on stage for the first time. Not too big of a role, but it's something. And everyone got paid their fair share. And most importantly, it was theater for actors to do. There was no need to bring in directors or writers or the government. It was just actors doing what they loved. So let's talk mass. Now, it's thought that mass originated in relation to the Carnival festival in Venice, where wearing mass is usually the tradition. But at any rate, they allowed for spectacle. You see it from far away. I want to check that out. What the fuck is going on over there? That looks cool. And it's also showing you the facial expressions of these archetype characters to be more recognized more easily. That's Arlecchino. He's always got that silly little mustache and that stupid grin. And it's also literally the first impression that both you and the audience gets of the character, how they act and behave. It also, in some part, represents the central themes of Commedia, such as anti-humanism, exaggeration, distortion. You guys are playing with these wildly ridiculous characters that are on the very border of what it is to be human. They're all pretty animalistic, but they still have human traits. As exaggerated as they might be, there's still human traits there that people can relate to and laugh at. Now, this stuff is still popular to this day. Commedia has influenced much of Western theater. Shakespeare, Oscar Wilde, Chaplin, sitcoms, the list goes on and on. And as I start to describe some of the stock characters next that inhabit Commedia Town, hopefully some of you will start to see what seems familiar, what you've seen and read in media before. You might go, oh yeah, that Dottore actually kind of sounds like this character over here. And keep that in mind. That will be part of the homework assignment, which you'll see at the end. That sounds scary. The homework isn't that bad. The homework's literally just to watch a few episodes of a sitcom. Now, just a brief disclaimer before I go over the characters. Every troupe, both traditionally to this day, Northwestern, traditional troops, they all have their own cast of characters. It is extremely difficult to compile one definite list of all Commedia characters that every single scholar and every actor would be satisfied with. So I'm just going to go over what our sort of characters are at UChicago Commedia. So give me just a second. I'm going to start grabbing the mass And I'm gonna switch over to this other thing I want to share. So I'm gonna start off with Il Magnifico. I don't have a mask for him, but after that I'll do Pantalone. How do I share the screen? I don't have a script for this part. I'm just gonna like look at the characters and tell you what's going on here. Here we are. This is Commedia. It might look complicated. Let me walk you through it. In essence, you have four basic groups here. First thing I want to point your eyes to is at the top left here. The higher up we go, imagine it as you're literally like going higher up in social class rank. Same with moving to the left on these specific tiers. For example, Il Dottore here at the top is a bit more higher in status than Pantalone over here in the top middle. Main tiers we have here, these four guys over here, as well as La Signora, La Ruffiana, these are the vecchi, which means pretty much old in Italian. And yeah, these are the oldest people in Commedia. They're also the ones with the highest social standing. These are the masters. These are the parents. I say parents because we have these four here in the middle, the lovers. Flavio and Flaminia are the usual ones. They're usually the son and daughter of some of the vecchi. And most stories involve them being involved in some Romeo and Juliet-esque type thing. Romeo and Juliet, very Commedia story, by the way. These two on the edges, Il Capitano, Pasquella, these are outsiders. They don't really fit too well into Commedia. They often lie about their credentials, and they are often literal foreigners to Commedia town. And just down here at the bottom, all of these are the Zani, which is sort of Italian for like Johnny, just to say that these are the everymen. These are who most of the people who came to see the shows could relate to. These are servants and workers. Let's go through this thing. From the very top, Il Magnifico. Don't have the mask for him. He is the head honcho, Commedia town, a little bit of an eagle aesthetic, very regal. He exudes a lot of ominous, evil energy. He is just the sheer essence of power in Commedia town. And he's not actually the oldest. I'm going to move on to the oldest next, Pantalone. Let me grab the mask right here. Pantalone, you'll see there in the middle. Pantalone is the oldest person in Commedia. It's also the character that I play. Now, this isn't my mask, but I just like the little fuzz for the eyebrows here. Pantalone is very old and very rich. He is a miser. He likes money. He likes hoarding money, doesn't like spending it. And he's usually very strict with his servants and doesn't want to pay them anything. Really rude guy, sometimes creepy, a lot of the times creepy. I'm going to move on to Tartaglia next. I actually don't have his mask with me. Whatever. You see him right there at the top right wearing the green. He is also old. He's a little bit lower in standing than the other guys, mainly because he's not super confident. He's very shy. He likes to stutter a lot. And oddly, he's usually given the role of judging stuff. You know, if there's a squabble going on in Commedia town, they'll usually turn to Tartaglia to see what he has to say. And he'll be like, I don't really know. Stuff like that. He's a fun guy. Let's move on to Il Dottore, another wonderful vecchi who has the most wonderful mustache. You see him there at the top left wearing all black. His name literally means the doctor. And sure enough, he is a professor from some outlandish university. He has 17 PhDs, none of which are real. And he just spews a lot of nonsense all the time. He's rambling about stuff that he's making up at the moment, but he just presumes that he knows everything there is to know in existence. He's also a little bit of a drinker, if you want to play him that way. That's why he's got a bit of a gut. Next up, we have La Signora and La Ruffiana. Now, I don't have the mask for La Signora with me. These two are quite similar, which is unfortunate. You know, they're female characters, so they weren't given too much depth for the time. Most of their depth was given as wives to the other vecchi. That being said, we do give them a little bit more depth here. La Signora being a more regal example of enjoying the beauties and and more elegant sides of royalty and nobility, while La Rufiana, on the other hand, is a bit more uh, troubled. She does not like her life. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, I guess. Um, we're just going to move right on to the lovers. Now, I don't have the mask for any of these folk because they specifically never wear masks. They are sort of the most human, the most recognizable as, yeah, that's me. I'm in love. I've been in love. And so they all sort of wash together as the same character, Flavio, Flaminia, Isabella. They are all young lovers who are very poetic and swoon a lot and are hopeless romantics. Really the best way to describe their character, except for Mezzatino. He's a new addition who I've been thinking about adding to the troupe. Essentially, he is a wannabe innamorati. He is in the same class. I just realized I never said innamorati means lovers. He's a wannabe lover, innamorati. He's of the same social standing, but he just sort of completely fails at the hopeless romantic thing. He's very aggressive and rugged and just, not cute and lovey like you would think Romeo and Juliet. He's a show off and too confident, and no one likes him. We're going to move on now to the outsiders, Capitano, Pasquella. I'll start off with Capitano, Il Capitano, the captain. Now, Il Capitano also has a wonderful mustache and a very pointy nose, reminiscent of a sword maybe, or of compensating for something that he does not have. Now, Il Capitano is, of course, a war general that has never gone to war, but loves to boast about his many victories and how confident and brave of a hero he is. But of course, if any conflict ever comes up in a show, he is the first to run away screaming like a little child. Pasquella is a bit more interesting. She is sometimes played two different ways. Sometimes Pasquella is another Vecchi, another wife of Pantalone or Il Dottore, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In our troupe, and traditionally a bit as well, she is played as a witch on the outside of town who is responsible for any magic shenanigans that happen in the show. So if you like witches, Pasquella's the gal for you. Let's move on to our Zani. We've got a lot of them. We're going to start off with Scaramouche. So I'm going to sort of draw a little imaginary line for you. You can imagine it sort of happening after Scaramouche, Brigella, and Pulcinella. These three are the upper Zani. They are the top of the servants. Scaramouche and Brigella in particular are considered masters of the servants. They are the highest social standing in the servants, and they tell all the other servants what to do. Scaramouche traditionally is played as sort of capitano, but like a servant, which is boring. So traditionally in our troupe, we've played him as sort of, best way I can describe, as a Squidward character. He is the head servant, and he is very uptight and strict about how he got to his position, and no one should ever do anything wrong, and there's a right way to do everything. A Squidward, in essence. Let's move on to Brigella. Brigella is one of the most violent characters in Commedia. You can imagine all the same stuff I said with Scaramouche. He's a head servant. He's very proud of how he got to his position, but he's also very violent about it. He wants to make sure that everyone does what they're supposed to do, and he will make sure they do it by any means necessary. Very violent, Brigella. We'll move on to Pulcinella now, who's got a big nose and usually a wart on his face. Now, Pulcinella is not any master of the servants. He's just sort of a higher standing servant. And he also tends to have a lot of say around the servants. Usually, if there's any rebellions going on with the Zani, he's at the head of it. He's at the head of, hey, guys, we should do something. We don't want these Vecchi telling us what to do anymore. This sucks. He likes to eat a lot. He likes to be lazy, very crafty, very stupid. Columbina does not have a mask. I think I'm going to want to talk about Columbina first, yeah. Columbina and Arlecchino are usually paired together very often. Usually Columbina is considered to be a love interest of Arlecchino. And of course, Arlecchino is the face of Commedia. So Columbina is usually shrugged to the side, but she really shouldn't be. She is one of the most interesting Zani out of all of them because she is the only Zani who is sort of human in that she's smart, she's practical. Whenever there's a problem, she's the one to solve it and figure out how to do it. And she's funny and she makes a laugh and a joke every now and then. She's just truly like the best person you want to be around, the only character without a flaw, pretty much. And she doesn't wear a mask. Arlecchino, on the other hand, is a big ball of mischief. Surely you have heard of Harlequin before, same sort of shtick. He is the quintessential trickster. You see that big mustache, that big, silly, stupid grin. He is always up to something. He is the highest of the lower Zani. And he's up to something stupid. He's up to some weird scheme. He's got a lot of monkey characteristics. He's very playful in that way, loves to eat, loves the body humor sort of deal. Let's move on to Coviello, who we do not have a mask for yet, because again, this is one character who I just think would be an interesting addition to the troupe. You can imagine it as basically any of the other Zani, but you see that sort of instrument in his hand. He is a musical Zani. He's got a big passion for songs, and any trouble he's going through, he wants to express it through music. He's a real silly nerd, and we love him. We're going to move on to Zani now, who is, this whole lower class here is called the Zani. He's got that name. One of the earliest Commedia characters was Zani. And as I mentioned earlier, Zani is sort of Italian-ish for Johnny, because Zani is the everyman. Zani is a naive boy from the countryside who's come to the city and is looking for a job, is very enthusiastic to get stuff done, but is also very silly and stupid and lazy. The usual servant gig. He's the everyman. We love Zani. Now we're going to move on to Scapino. Now, Scapino does not have a mask usually. Scapino is a pretty recent character in Commedia history, comes from, I think, around France, maybe the 17th century. You can imagine him as a lesser capitano, but with more of a showmanship and sort of schemery. Imagine sort of Arlecchino mixed with capitano. You get Scapino, this sort of trickster who's equally afraid of conflict, but very boastful, not in a war way, but just in a I'm smarter than everyone way. Now we've got Stupino. Stupino is one of the last masks I've got here. Best friend of Zani. As the name implies, his character is literally such that he is stupid. He is the dumbest character in Commedia, no matter what. He's very hungry, almost always happy, because, he's dumb. Look at those big rosy cheeks. Last one we have on the list is Pedro Lino, also sometimes called Piero. If you ever see this weird Renaissance painting of a white clown with a sort of teardrop, that's actually Piero. Also pretty recent, from France, 17th, 18th century. Wears a lot of white, sometimes has a mask, is usually just white face paint. Most interestingly, traditionally and in our troupe, Piero is silent. He is a mime. He's also the youngest character in Commedia, the youngest of the servants, which is why he is at the very bottom lower rung, all the way at the bottom right. He is the lowest status character in Commedia. He is a child. He is unfortunately usually the butt of many jokes. Many of them abuse him and torture him, and he's very sad about it. Poor little Pedrolino. That sums it up for all the characters. I'm going to finish up now with the general framework for Commedia and some general tips. If I can find the presentation again. There it is. Just a second, dear friends. Time to meet the characters. I swear I'll figure this out. Okay, we are back and we're almost done. So now that you know the characters and the history, let's finish off today's session by exploring the general framework of what you guys and what people back then were doing in a show. And I'll give you some basic tips for getting started in acting in Commedia. So here we have a little basic script here. Sorry it's so blurry, whatever. I mean, you really don't have to read all this. It's just to give you an example um, that you sort of see that really Commedia scripts are just character enters, does thing, exits. You have entrances, basic actions, and exits. Everything else, besides that general plot that's scripted, is improvised, rehearsal to rehearsal, show to show, different every night. You act as your character would in that situation. You're always playing the same character. And then rehearsal to rehearsal, we refine the show to sort of be a better shape before show night. But besides that, I mean, that really is all the show is. It's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. The biggest bulk of all this information was just the history and the magic of Commedia. But I want to talk about another thing. Lazzi. What's a lazzi? Lazzo, lasagna. What is that? So lazzi are like little sketches. Singular word is lazzo. Now I have this book called Lazzi by Mel Gordon that does sort of a wonderful job in its opening chapter of describing what a lazzi is and how it was traditionally used. I'm not going to read it out now, but if you'd ever want to borrow the book, or I could always scan the pages of the intro chapter and send it to you, I'd love to do that. It's a great book. For now, all you need to understand about a lazzi is that they're little short sketches that were employed for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they were just peppered throughout a script beforehand to have some definite moments of laughter throughout. Sometimes the show was absolutely bombing, the audience was hating it, so the actors would just go, grab that one lazzi. That always works. And then they would just put it on right then and there and hopefully get a laugh out of the audience finally. Sometimes entire scripts were written just about around one lazzi because the troupe just found it so funny and they really wanted to do it that night. So they just wrote the show around that lazzi. They're really cool. We're going to be practicing with some of them later on in future sessions. And I'd be more than happy to help you guys put some in the show at the end of this quarter if you'd like. But for now, you guys can enjoy this. Lots of the apples. I think one or two of you guys did this in auditions. Arlecchino and Pedrolino tame a bear by throwing him apples, which he catches perfectly in his mouth. So, what about the audience? What was and what should be your interaction with them? So the relationship that's happening in scenes is not just between characters, but also with the audience. You know that they're there and you can interact with them, react off of their reactions to what you do, play off of them almost as much as you play off with your fellow actors. You know, at the end of the day, the show is for them. So if you see something working, keep doing it, lean into it, make a joke about it, you know? All that being said, you know, feel free to talk to the audience, feel free to look them in the eye, address them. Just do not touch them. Do not touch the audience. Not just a COVID thing, it's a we don't want to get sued thing. So had to put that disclaimer there. Now I'll just leave you guys with some general tips for acting in Commedia. So first off, everything you do on stage from this point on must be life or death. If you are brushing your teeth, put your whole body into it. Grab another character to help splash water into your face with a bucket after each brush stroke. Maybe give up and use a hose to clean your mouth. And eventually just resort to pulling out the tooth because you don't want to get cavities that badly. It's an extreme example, but Commedia deals in extremes. You know, it's where we find the stakes in the middle of this scene that we're engaging in for the audience while we're just coming up with this shit on the spot. You know, never let the action that you're doing just have the stakes that it usually would in your everyday life. Don't let brushing your teeth just be the usual habit of brushing your teeth. Let it be this prevention of life ending cavities that other characters would scorn you for if they saw you with it. Now, for the next point, be as ridiculous as you'd like. Please, I'd love that, but take it seriously. What do I mean by that? Now, I'm not Robert making fun of how silly, let's say I'm playing Zani, how silly Zani is for wanting this slice of cake. You know, I am Zani. I am in the body and I'm in the mind of Zani, and therefore I am going to take it 100% seriously. I'm not going to go, oh, hey, look at me. I'm hungry. I want this slice of cake. Isn't that funny? I'm not going to make fun of it. Instead, I'm going to show you that I need that cake, that I would do anything for that slice of cake, that I would get down on my knees and beg and pray and cry real tears for that cake. And then I would concoct a ridiculous scheme to get that cake in my hands. If you believe all of it, the sheer commitment to the ridiculousness will be funnier than any pun you come up with on stage. I promise it will. Now, above all else, be clear, be specific, and be confident. Now, I understand it's easier said than done to just be confident. You're doing this wacky, weird action that just came into your head in that moment, and you're in front of a whole crowd of people. It's scary. But this is part of what the training is going to be for. This is why you're going to be doing these shows. The shows will be part of your training. It's going to help you find the confidence to let loose and trust yourself to make a fool of yourself on stage. You're going to make a fool of yourself. That's the point. And when you make a fool of yourself, you are going to do it with an action that you came up with and that will be specific and clear. So when another character tells you to clean the mansion, you will know that that should mean to grab an imaginary pantomime broom from the edge of the room. And then you'll know that you should brush the stage with the wooden edge of the broom. And now the bristles are getting in your face. And then you just eventually give up cleaning to show off to your friend Zani how it's funny that the bristles make you look like Dottore. And then you do a silly Dottore impression. Not only that, but you will come up with all this and you'll do it on your own. And you will make it clear that you are doing these specific actions that you came up with, and you're not doing anything else that might look similar or seem similar. It is specific, it is clear, and it is confident. Now, that's about it. Congrats. You made it through the most boring part of this entire quarter-long training. But I just want to give you homework. I know, scary homework. You already have enough homework. Don't worry, it's easy and hopefully a little bit fun. That's the intention. First off, I have a feeling you guys might be tempted to research Commedia on Google now. I know I was after my first training session. Feel free, please. That being said, there's not many online resources, unfortunately. It's probably just going to take you to Wikipedia first. Please, for the love of God, don't let Wikipedia be your main source of Commedia information. If you have to check out one place first, check out Antonio Fava's website. I'm going to send it to the Discord as well. But he is, in essence, the leading figure on Commedia today. He's like 70 years old. He's from fucking Italy. And he's even done like workshops at Northwestern before. He makes masks. He's written so many books. He talks about this stuff all the time. And he is like one of the biggest advocates for it with the largest voice that everyone can hear. Check out his website if you want to learn more. He's a great guy to learn from. Now, your other homework is to watch an episode 2 of any comedic sitcom you want. It can be one that you've seen before. In essence, the main point of this exercise is that I want you to get a piece of paper, yes, a real piece of paper and pencil, and write down maybe 5 to 10 of the main characters and which traditional stock character they fit. To give you an example, I'm doing this homework assignment. I picked SpongeBob. You can't take SpongeBob now, by the way. SpongeBob and Patrick, that's easy. Zani and Stupino. Mr. Krabs, he loves money, he's old, that's Panelone. Sandy, know-it-all, Dottore, obviously. Do any sitcom you like? It's Always Sunny, Friends, The Simpsons, Parks and Rec, The Office, if you want some recommendations, if you don't know any sitcoms of your own to look to, those are perfect places to check out. Lastly, if you have any questions at all, I'm going to be out of town Friday through Sunday. It's the whole reason this first meeting is virtual. That being said, email me, message me on Discord or Facebook Messenger. I might give you my phone number too. Maybe not my phone number, not just yet, but message me on anything else. I'll probably get back to it on Sunday. I'm sorry, but I will get back to it. If it's a super pressing question that needs to be answered ASAP, ask it in the general channel on the Discord. One of the current Commedia members or maybe one of our alumni will help you with what you need. Besides that, that's it. Go enjoy your weekend. Do your homework before next weekend. I'll see you soon.